In this panel, we're asking basically the same question. What is it going to take for us to get beyond literate Western models of theological training and contextualize it for the benefit of oral learners? And this panel is helping us look at that through the lens of our non-institutional forms of training. This typically may be more of a grassroots training. It's not something that seeks accreditation, but it may be the most available and influential training. And as we're hearing from the table back here, because this typically is unaccredited, there's often more flexibility for what that can offer us, but it also, then you don't necessarily have the impartial observation to help ask the hard questions. Jackson, you have done training both in the U.S. and internationally with these kind of people. And in your paper, you described a couple of things that you found that worked really well. One of them has to do with the sort of dialogical process. And sometimes we think about teaching a story to people or teaching a theology. It seems to me you're not quite teaching theology. Then tell us what you're advocating.
Well, what we call it is inductive Bible study oral style. And what we're doing is we are asking questions to help people find discoveries in the Scriptures for themselves. Now, as someone who's a storyteller, you're preparing the story, you're digging into it, and you're trying to find, well, what are the spiritual truths that I found here? Then, when you go to whoever you're presenting the group to, you've thought about, okay, well, I ask about what choices somebody made, and I ask about what happened later, and it helped me see that, God, when people act in faith, God does miraculous things. So, I want to share that with the people. So maybe if I ask them about choices, and then I ask them, well, what happened because they made their choice, maybe they can find that same discovery too. And so we begin there. So, but acknowledging that the role of the Holy Spirit in discussion is, you might see, oh, well, I asked about the choice, I asked about the result, and I saw God did a miracle, but they saw something different that, wow, that's in there too. And that's just as valid. And continue to move, recognize, okay, the Holy Spirit's speaking here, so let's take the conversation in this area. I mean, I think that we need to keep in mind that, God did make the office of teacher. And although we are in oral communities and we have to be sensitive to the context and, where we're coming from, that doesn't mean that the role of teacher has now vanished, and now all we have left is facilitator.
Okay. Now, Miriam, in your response, you raised some questions on that very point, it seems to me, about this discovery process, the kind of questions asked, and I think you had some questions about where are the safe points. You want to talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, I think I raised 3 areas, and I'm still processing these. I read your paper again today, and I thought, whoa.
I read your paper again today, too.
All right. In the area of, are we teaching the whole counsel of God? And you probably are, but I didn't see it stated, and we may all be okay with that, but the people outside the room, they need to be reminded of this, that we are not just teaching our favorite snippets here and there, but we are teaching a balance. And then the second area was culture. Are we selecting our stories and then crafting our stories in ways that that arise from and speak to the culture's key themes in the area of economic realities, social relationships, and worldview and ideas, and also perhaps the history of oppression, which is an important part. And then the third area was oral art genres, and I talked about connotation as opposed to denotation. And I remember, and I don't know, I read your paper again, I don't think that's really applies, but anyway, I do remember one time I happened to hear Walter Wangerin, the famous Christian novelist, speaking, and he was talking about some short time he had in a Bible school in Africa where he was trying to teach writing, and he was trying to do it by commenting on a local tale or myth. And so he was asking the students, they told the myth, and then he was asking them to analyze this, 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 and this. And as they proceeded, the students got more and more uncomfortable. And finally, at the end, one of them blurted out, "We've killed the story." And so I raised the question, is it ever appropriate to let the mystery just shimmer and just speak? Is that sometimes more powerful than, you know?
Yeah.
Like you said, let it shimmer rather than shredded. Shimmers
Yeah.
are shredded. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have several issues here that are part of any training, informal or formal, which is, you know, how do you assure yourself that it's complete? When you say whole counsel of God, that means different things to different people, right? Sure.
I don't want to say systematic theology.
Well, no. The term is
Okay,
not-
going back on that
the
again.
term is not forbidden here. But that term, counsel of God, does mean different things to different people. Some schools pride themselves that there is a course that teaches each of the 66 books of the Bible, and to them, that's a definition of, we've taught the whole counsel of God. We've actually had a professor lecture on each of the 66 books. Other people would say, no, you've covered all the basic key doctrines, themes. What do you have in mind? Or do you have something else in mind in terms of whole counsel of God?
I'm an anthropologist. I leave it up to
Now leave it for
but
just don't leave holes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a quote in my paper, which I can't quite remember, but it's something from John Stott saying that every week as the pastor preaches, gradually the people should develop more of a Christian mind. And many pastors don't actually have that goal, they just don't think about it. But, you know, the responsibility that over time, the people become more mature, and that means that they grasp more and more of the truth that God has revealed through Word and through Spirit and through life. Now, you know.
I think this is part where you were talking about, and Jackson was talking about this, how individual stories need to be incorporated into a system, some broader theological perspective. Are you working at that? How do you go
Well, what I
about
would
that?
say is, first off, when I read Miriam's paper and I read the thoughts that you brought up, I said, wow, those are really good questions. So I really appreciated you bringing those out. And I felt like, you know, the paper was so short we couldn't say everything we wanted to, so I'm glad that you asked those questions. And one thing I would say is the whole counsel of God is that we're in a training setting and we're teaching a method, and we've got various links of what we can do. And the method that that we are teaching and we're seeing reproducing is you can open up any passage in the Bible or listen to it on audio and use this, and it works. It works in epistles, it works in story, it works in Psalms. And that's part of teaching the whole counsel. And we have, I think, 60 oral Bible schools going on in the world right now. And within that oral Bible school, it's 6 months, but what we've worked out is people go 2 weeks and then they have 2 weeks off, and then 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, so they can, you know, develop their fields and different things like that. They're going to learn, I think, around 160 stories from the Old and New Testaments. They're going to learn, I think, around 20 Psalms or so, and then another however many extra passages that come from the epistles. So we're giving them a broader scope and also saying the tools that we've given you, now you can take